distinguished Rabbanim, beloved family, and dear friends. Concerning the tragedy in Surfside and how it hit home with the loss of Itty and Tzvi, there's nothing to say. But there is a lot to say. Out of love and respect for Tzvi, I'm not going to say a lot. Tzvi had a knack of telling rabbis after finishing a half-hour speech, great speech, but you could have said it in 5 minutes. As shocking and as sad as it was to see Tzvi and Itty side by side in front of 770, and then as they were lowered next to the oil, next to Zaidi Felig, one small consolement was the Maimer HaZoyhar. There's a Zohar that teaches that Nechale, that it is preferable for a husband and wife to be buried next to each other. Based on this Zohar, there are Piskei Dinim, both from older authorities and from contemporary authorities, which utilize this Zohar in practical halacha. I have a few stories about that, but in respect for Tzvi, I won't share them at this moment. We know that the living must take to heart, and therefore all of us here and everyone who is watching around the world, we all must appreciate what Tzvi and Itty stood for in their lives, to learn from them, to follow in their footsteps of goodness and kindness, of Torah and Chassidus, of hospitality, of generosity. Itty nurtured my Rebbetzin, my wife Goldie, for many years, but we know that she nurtured many, many people here and many people around the world. She mothered my wife, and she mothered many, many people. Tzvi was very quick to do a mitzvah. One short story, besides the story that people know, how when my son Shmuley was submerged in the Felig pool at 4386 Pine Tree, and my wife took him out of the pool, Tzvi saved his life. Besides that story, there was another story. It happened on Gimel Tammuz, Tafshin Mem Aleph, 1981. I was at a chasna, at a wedding in South Beach. It was my cousin's Tammy Sand, who was getting married to what would later become the ambassador to Israel from the United States. And sure enough, Shmuley was at home with a babysitter, and there was no cell phones. I used the payphone at Temple Emmanuel, and there was no answer on the other line. We got scared, and I called up Tzvi. He was my first to call, and we had a robbery a few weeks earlier, so I was doubly scared, and the babysitter wasn't answering. This was in 1981, in the summer, and I told Tzvi, I'll take Collins, you take the 95. Collins is about 15 miles, 95 is about 23 miles. Tzvi beat me by about 5 minutes, taking the longer I-95, and he knocked on the door a few times. The young babysitter fell asleep. Shmuley was sleeping, but this was Tzvi. He didn't have any ego. Both Tzvi and Itty personified the bittul that Chassidus speaks about. They were very humble, and certainly v'achayit aliboy, we all could learn from their humility. Before I introduce one of the children who will be speaking tonight, I'll just share with you something I once heard from the late Chief Rabbi of Montreal, Rabbi Pinchas Hirschsprung. When they put up my father's matzeva in 1993, it was a cold, wintry day. They put up the matzeva, and Rabbi Hirschsprung said the following. He said, a headstone, a matzeva, the longest it could last is a few hundred years. That's the longest. If you go through history, you'll see that no headstone lasted longer than a few hundred years. He says the real matzeva, the real headstone that follows someone who passes on are the children and the children's children, because that's eternal. Unlike the headstone that maximum could last a few hundred years, it's the children and the children's children throughout the generations. They are the real walking and talking matzevas. I'd like to call upon my dear niece, who's a tremendous speaker, a tremendous writer, a tremendous human being, Chana Wasserman.
My parents, Manta, the two pillars in my life, the two halves of one heart who love their children so deeply, we never believed it would end. And yet I'm standing here tonight talking about how I lost the two people I can't live without. Whoever knew my parents knew one didn't come without the other. My mother's sincerely over-the-top way of living, and my father's poised way of living connected to create what we all knew as Tzvi and Itty. My parents were such a beautiful example of what it means to have a friendship within a marriage. Looking back, I wish so badly I would have documented every waking moment with them. I want to remember them walking and talking. I want to remember my father standing by my mother's side in every country and home we lived in. I want to remember my mother laughing with her head back. I want to remember my mother talking and my father listening for 9 hours when we drove from Sydney to Melbourne. I want to remember my father holding my hand when we walked to Shul. I want to remember my father's voice every time he called me Peanut. I want to remember my mother kissing my cheek and repeating the words, "Love you." I love you too, Ma. I always assumed I would have them until the end of time, so now all I want to do is remember. One of the greatest joys in my life was growing up witnessing my parents. I will always remember the image of my parents waiting for me by the entrance of their building. I would come to pick up my mother so we can go to the beach together for sunrise. My father was there to wait with my mother. He was there to carry my mother's beach chair so she didn't have to. He was there to walk with us. He was there to laugh with us. That was the beauty of my father. He was always there with his strong presence and subtle smile. My father took care of us the same way he took care of Ma. It was unconditional and constant. Whenever there was a moment of need, he was there. Whatever the situation was, he was there. When I felt like I could no longer carry my load, he was there to carry it for me. Ta, when I think of you, I will always feel taken care of. I don't think I thanked you enough, so from the bottom of my broken heart, thank you, Ta. I have 6 brothers. I'm the only girl. So throughout my life, my mother was my person. The words, Ma, what do you think, are part of who I am. I always look to her for advice, for support, for love, for laughter, for validation. I don't think I'll ever stop looking to her. In every moment, in every space, for all of time, I will look to her. She was the person I turned to for the big moments and the smallest moments. She knew without needing to be told. My mother was my mother, my sister, and my best friend. She filled all these roles so well and with such ease. My mother, with her words, was like having a never-ending playlist of positive affirmations. Whenever I spent time with my mother, I would watch her gasp with joy over anyone she encountered. Everything was amazing. This was beautiful. That was stunning. I love her. I love this. I love you. What's the world going to do without all her love and joy? My mother would come to my house and stop at every corner to take it all in. She would say, Chana, how did you think of putting flowers in a vase full of water? I love it. There was always an overflow of love and support, and I miss that. I've been struggling so much with the situation myself and my brothers find ourselves in. One day we had parents. The next day we were looking for our parents. And 12 days later we were told we lost our parents. On day 5 of the search and rescue, I was standing by the side of the building, staring at a mountain of rubble. My heart called out to my parents. Ma, are you there? Ta, can you hear me? In response, I heard the words, Hineni. At the time, I thought the voice belonged to my parents, and now I realize the voice belonged to Hashem. I called out to my parents, and Hashem answered me, here I am. My mother gifted one of her friends with a Tehillim and wrote these words inside of it. Use this on a daily basis to connect to Hashem, because always remember, Hashem is the constant in your life, and Hashem will take care of you and your family and will hold your hand, guiding you on the right path. Love you, Tzvi and Itty. I'm standing here tonight because even though I still don't believe they're not here with us, I want to say that it's my honor to be my parents' daughter. I cherish every moment and interaction with them. Now, not only will I look to Hashem, I will also look to you, Ma and Ta, for comfort and guidance every day of my life. I hope to feel your love and care always and forever. I love you, Ma, and I love you, Ta.
Chana, you and your family should only know of simchas from this point onwards. Shmuley, when we spoke about the Shloshim, and we realized that it's Chavav, so we know, Shmuley, you told me that Chavav is the name of Hashem. The last time the Rebbe spoke on the 26th of the month was 26th of Shvat, Tovshin Nun Beis. That was the last time the Rebbe spoke, and he spoke about the significance of 26 being the name of Hashem and how it represents the presence of Hashem being so strong that nothing undesirable happens. And that will be when Mashiach comes, and the Rebbe spoke these words of the significance of number 26. The last time the Rebbe spoke on the 26th of any month was the 26th of Shvat, 1992, 5752, and there he says the significance of 26, which is the day of the Shloshim, is that it represents the presence of Hashem being felt and being seen to the point that there is nothing negative in the world. Without further ado, my dear and precious nephew, Shmuley.
Chana, that was beautiful. I'm proud to be a brother. We are here tonight because God took two beautiful people away from us. Two people that were not just my parents, but people who taught me to see the world in the most unique and beautiful way. Though they were taken from me in such a painful way and decades too early, I am blessed to have had 41 years being loved and guided by the two most amazing people that I know. Ta, Ma, I never got the proper chance to say thank you. But we know the neshamas are here and listening, so tonight I want to thank you for just a few of the many things you have ingrained in me. You taught me these things not by lecturing me, but by behaving that way every single day of your shortened lives. You taught me that humor is a gift. It's a gift that makes the tough times and the tough people bearable. A gift you can never give enough of. Life knocks you down sometimes, and it knocked you guys down more than your fair share. But you always dust it off with humor. You taught me that you cannot fix every person, you cannot fix every problem, but you can fix your reaction and how it affects you. And laughter was a constant in our lives. I remember laughing with you through some of our toughest times together, and I can't bear the thought of never laughing with you again. You taught me fierce loyalty as long as it was deserved. Ta, you had a strict vetting process, amassed a loving teddy bear you really are. You taught me to always question authority, to make sure it was being used correctly, to make sure that everyone was being treated fairly and equally. You did not stand for BS or fluff, but once someone passed your vetting process, they were set. They would not be questioned again for the rest of their lives. No matter the circumstance, you would be in their corner, fighting for them, protecting them, and showing them love. You were unflappable. I do not know a man more loyal than my father. To the Rebbe, to his wife, to his kids, and to his friends. I grew up with endless amounts of unconditional love. You both loved so hard with your entire being. There was nothing I needed to do besides exist. There was never expectations or conditions for your love. It was pure and endless. That love gave me room to explore. That love allowed me to make mistakes. That love gave me room to grow. And that love gave me confidence, knowing you were always both standing proudly behind me. You were concerned about the tiniest parts of my life. You reminded me not to work too hard, not to stress too much, to take care of myself, and of course, to relax. Ma, you saw people for who they were on the inside and never judged them on anything else. You didn't see anything else. Before I got married, I remember Eliza mentioning to me that she was waiting for a talk, for me to bring up any reservations. My parents may have had about marrying a girl without the traditional yichus my family was used to. It never even dawned on me to have that talk, because it never dawned on you, Ma and Ta. She came from a beautiful, loving Jewish family, and we were honored to be a part of it. All Jews are equal was not just a saying, it was the way you lived your lives. If I loved her, then you loved her, and that was that. I want to thank you, Ta and Ma, for the gift of Eliza and the beautiful family we created together. Above all else, I grew up watching you give. You both actively seeked out people who needed something, whether it was time, attention, a compliment, a ride, meal, money, whatever was needed and whatever you had. Ma, you gave with an endless amount of loving words and support, double and triple checking everyone was okay, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You didn't let up until you felt that they were really okay. Really, really okay. Ta, you gave with almost no words at all. You always showed up. Even when it was too awkward for anyone else to be there, you were there. Not because you knew what to say, but because someone had to be there even when there was nothing to say. A lesson I painfully learned these last 6 weeks. You both gave me so much, but what will always stay with me is the way you gave. You gave with such love and were so careful to make sure that no one ever felt like they were ever taking. If someone needed a ride, you were heading in that direction anyway. If someone needed a place to eat, you'd say you loved company at your meals. If someone needed money, you'd say you had meiser that you had to give away anyway. You never made anyone feel like you were going out of your way for them. And the truth is, maybe you really were never going out of your way because you loved helping people that much. I will never be able to fill your shoes, but I hope one day it will be obvious to everyone that I'm Tzvi and Itty's son.
Shmuley, you and your family should only know of Simchis, together with everyone who's assembled here. We're going to show a video. Before we do that, I just want to share with you that the Torah tells us that when Aaron, the high priest, passed away, the Kohen Gadol, so then it was the entire house of Israel, even the women who mourned, more so than by Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was Oyev Shalom and Yoidev Shalom. What happened here, it wasn't just Kol Beis Yisrael. I've spoken since June 24th and beyond to Gentiles, non-Jews, who told me they were crying and they were praying. This was something that really hit home to everyone, locally and around the world. We're about to see a video where certain individuals will share with us how Itty and Tzvi touched their lives. And this is only a sampling of how much and how many people Itty and Tzvi touched all over the world.
Take 100. Every time I start to cry, so I'm going to try my best.
Itty, what do you say about a sister that you had for 61 years? She nurtured me, she mothered me, telling me how to run my life. She was always telling me what I should buy. Itty was just so much fun, full of life, wanted so much to live.
I would describe them as sincere, real, and funny people.
He didn't talk about himself much. He didn't blurt about himself much, which was really nice. In fact, I've heard more stories in the past 2 weeks than I ever knew in my whole life about Tzvi, which is something touching, which is something beautiful about it.
When my 2-year-old Shmuley slipped into the pool, nobody noticed, and Goldie took him out. After a few minutes, he was submerged. Tzvi put him on a table, resuscitated him, got all the water out of him, brought him back to life. And as Tzvi would tell Shmuley for many years later, Shmuley, you're breathing my air.
But Tzvi, I always remember him as the man who saved my life. That's always what I would think about when I would see him. And Tzvi was very kind enough to remind me each time he saw me that he saved my life. He would say, "Tennis house, I saved your life." I actually felt very safe whenever he was around. I felt, if I was going to be in danger, this was a man who already had saved me and already had good credibility to get me when I was in danger.
We were going to Studley Park where the Yarra River, and we were going to go canoeing. I didn't know Tzvi Ainsworth, but I quickly got to know Tzvi Ainsworth. So I was this young lad, and all of a sudden there were these cries and screams because somebody had gotten into trouble in the water, and I think the canoe had capsized, and at any rate there was a real panic. I remember standing there amongst others, and this guy Tzvi Ainsworth, who was a lot bigger than me, I was tiny then, and he stood there. I watched him and jumped into the water and got the person out. The person was somebody called Shimon Hertz.
Nusra and I were talking, think like, what? Tzvi, you did that? My father? My brother? What? What are you saying? So, didn't need to put the cape on to be a good guy. Didn't need to put the cape on to help people. So that's really touching. Itty, on the other hand, is like this colorful butterfly who goes from flower to flower, spreading color, spreading life, spreading passion, and spreading help to lots and lots of people. And they were the ultimate couple. They just complemented each other perfectly. So that is what an amazing couple they are.
She was just always so grateful for any small thing. For a beautiful day, a delicious coffee, a nice soft pair of Peter Alexander pajamas. The smallest things had such a great impact on her. And when you count all the small things, it feels like you've got a lot of big things as well.
Uncle Tzvi and Aunt Itty had such a special gift of making everyone feel loved and seen and heard and special.
You do not have to live with her to feel connected to her. She lived so far, but she had such a way of just connecting with people.
I reached out to Auntie Itty that same day, told her the situation, told her what I needed. She responded so fast with such a beautiful message, how it's such an honor for her to be able to do something to help me. Whatever she can do, she will do. And long story short, she pulled through with the help of Uncle Tzvi because they are an amazing team. They got the transcripts, they came through, and I am just so grateful for it.
She just made you feel so loved, and I just loved talking to her.
After I moved back from Israel, I was going through a rough period, and he would randomly call me and just chat and say, how you going? He shared with me stories and experiences of rough times he had gone through, and he was just such a good support, and he was so kind. I will never forget that.
Itty was an extremely compassionate, attentive, and loving person. She taught me to have an attitude of gratitude and to just appreciate all the little things in life.
People in our shul loved Tzvi. They always schmoozed with him. And the Shabbos after Shiva, they, in a matter of minutes, raised all the money for a new Sefer Torah in our shul in memory of Tzvi and Itty. So you're going to hear stories about Itty. Or if you knew Itty, you knew a Pnimi. She was a personification of a Pnimi.
My impression of Itty was, she's always so magnetic. I always just felt drawn to her and really loved talking to her. Just felt like a connection as soon as I met her, which is pretty amazing. She really had such a gift with people. My impression of Tzvi was just he was unassuming. He was warm, but in his own quiet and reserved way.
If Tzvi could help someone, he would do it, and in his very thoughtful, unassuming way, and creative. Who would have done? Who would do that? The security guard was nervous.
The two of us ended up laughing and giggling like schoolgirls because Itty was a very funny person, and she always knew how to make light of really serious situations. And the fact that she made light of them, I made light of them, and the next thing we know, we were laughing it off. And it's the best way to go through life. It's a wonderful lesson for everyone to have.
What most inspired me with him was his absolute conviction and loyalty to the Shloshim, to the Rebbe, to Chabad.
I had a really close, instant connection with Itty, and we spent many hours talking, shopping, walking, but most of the time was just talking in her bedroom.
She looked at me and she said, Moshe, for a friend, you travel anywhere and you must be present.
I was stunned at their inclusiveness, their generosity of spirit.
Everybody knows how Itty had a wide circle of friends and many people who loved her and related to her. Tzvi also dealt with many different people and made an impression, whether frum or fry, whether Jewish or not Jewish.
Itty, your mother, was a real Ashes Chayil. Somehow she lifted me up by her strong faith in Hashem that hopefully she carried over to me. Now, your father, Tzvi, adored your mother. The way he looked at her, I always told him, it's like the day he married her.
You didn't see it in her face. You didn't see a verkrimpt upon him. You didn't see a sad face. You still saw happiness there. You still saw that she accepted life and lived it to the fullest and even most probably beyond.
She's just an amazing person, and she's my inspiration. People always said that I reminded them of Bubby Itty, like of my mini her, and that is the biggest compliment I think I'm gonna ever get. Now with my Zadie, he connected with me and other people through nicknames and little jokes. You should be very thankful that you got to spend any time with them, any memories you have.
The one and only Prince Tzvi. And he always proved himself to be what he was back in the old days when I was a kid. He proved to be very reliable and responsible. He had nicknames for everybody, but they were just his terms of endearment. If someone was called Meathead, that means he really liked you. She helped people. And I really think that all those people she helped were in a way helping her as well, because she could overcome all her pain.
You do not have to live with her to feel connected to her. She lived so far, but she had such a way of just connecting with people. She used to want to know everything about my life. She wanted to know who my friends are, if I'm happy. And when she spoke to me, she made me feel like I'm the only person that matters.
Tzvi knew how to push my buttons in many different ways to get any reaction from me, especially when it came to smoking cigars. Once he had a huge grin on his face. After he had taken a photo of his grandson Yossi with a cigar in his mouth. He was so proud of his babysitting activity.
So to describe them a little bit in a couple of words that come to my mind is giving, real, truthful, emes, happy, and more than anything, alive. They're so full of life. They're alive. What did they teach us? What did they teach me? I would say that I learned that life is about what I can give to someone else, what I can do for someone else, not what someone else can do for me.
She always tell me that there is no age to be friends, and she was right, because she was a really, really good friend of mine. For me, they represent true love. She once told me that if it was up to him, they were living in an island, just the two of them, with no one.
Mostly Itty, I really got to spend some time with her. And it's just someone that you just don't get out of your mind. But I was just so amused by her energy. It was just so real, so authentic, so her. And I really wish I got to know her more.
First of all, Tzvi telling me how he was so proud
because it was his job as a Zeta to change all of his grandsons' first nappy after they've had their bris. And Tzvi was just like running at her every like instruction and just doing everything that she said, which I thought was very, very sweet.
Tzvi's talent, I spent years trying to replicate it. He once told me what he puts in it, but he must have forgotten something because it never tasted the same. I've learned a lot from Itty and Tzvi, but I think the most important is to have humor even in hard situations and to try to always see the good in people.
Tzvi and Itty taught us a lot of things about achnosus orchim and v'ahavta l'recha kamecha. Anybody could come to them and talk to them. Anybody talk to them, come over to their house about anything. They created a warm and comfortable house and welcoming home, which is hard to have. Not everybody has that.
From Tzvi, I learned that whatever you are, be a good one. And from Itty, I learned, be kind to everyone, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. That was just the way she was. She just made the best of everything and made the most of everything.
She was just so grateful, and it was such a small thing. So something that I can learn from them is to always appreciate the small things. It had such a great impact on her. And when you count all the small things, it feels like you've got a lot of big things as well.
Itty could feel in my voice and hear my voice whenever there was something good or bad in my life. And as the years went by, our daily talks were full of joy, love, and just fun. Tzvi was also amazing. Whenever I went to Melbourne, I would make him his favorite schnitzels. He was the most amazing, amazing friend to me.
You're hanging out with my niece. I had no idea he knew at the time.
A big personality. She lit up a room. She made you feel that you were her best friend and that you looked amazing and that she loved you, and she always had time. She gave you her 100%.
The thing that I learned the most from them is how to be a loving parent and to accept your children the way they are and to constantly remind them that they are loved. Never hang up the phone without saying, I love you.
And there was a mailman that was always standing at the end. He was very dour. I never saw him smile. When Itty and I went in there, within 1 minute he was her best friend. He was smiling, he was laughing. I've never seen a transformation like that. I've never had a friend like Itty. She was my closest friend in the world, a real soulmate, and I loved her beyond words.
Whether or not I feel well, whether or not, it didn't matter. She would just say, make plans, live your life, have dreams, have excitement, have wishes. She told me that she's getting back surgery, and within the same sentence, she told me, I'm also getting a bike to go riding at the beach. And I said, Itty, is that good for your back? And Tzvi started to laugh and said, do you know Itty?
He was very close to our shul next door, Beis Chabad Ehud Dvara. He loved that shul, and the people over there loved him. We all miss him very much and look forward to him and Itty coming back with the coming of Mashiach very soon.
Itty was loving, warm, funny, honest, and generous. She gave so much and never asked for anything back. Tzvi always had this calm about him, always patient, giving, and thoughtful. I learned from Tzvi to show up where needed and offer help and support. And I learned from Itty to always give the compliment you're thinking.
But everything in her life was just larger than life and living so in full color. Everything was exciting. Being around Itty was always so exciting. Everyone called her the mayor of Miami. That's who she was. She was friends with every single person there.
My entire life I got asked if I'm Chana's sister, Itty's daughter, how am I related to the Ainsworths, and I was always so honored and touched by that because they are both icons, and I will forever cherish that.
I remember Tzvi always as the penultimate gentleman. He was always so masuder in how he dressed and how he carried himself. And Itty was larger than life. She was vivacious. I think she always pushed to go out of your comfort zone, living in the moment and pushing everyone around her.
Their home was open to us whenever we wanted, and I felt very strongly that the relationships that we had with their kids was important to them. And as their niece, I felt like their home was my home.
And he was always like very like proud of us. He was always like protecting us, like a very proud uncle, and I always felt that. I always felt that love from him. She just always had such patience and time to sit and give you like her everything. She, like nothing else would matter when you were sitting with her.
To share, to be resilient, and to grow. And I guess that's a good recipe for happiness. So I learned to be happy from them.
And so I think that although he and Itty were taken from us so prematurely and so tragically, I think his family should take great comfort in knowing that just as in his lifetime he wanted the best for his family.
There was always a laugh, always good times. It was fun. Over the years, when Tzvi and Itty moved back to Miami, we never saw each other as often. But when we did, there was always that connection.
That's pretty much, I can tell you, is to laugh, because gotta laugh. Itty always laughed. And devoted husband like Tzvi, I'm sure everybody knows, was something that is incredible. I mean, can't say more than that.
I always know that they would do anything for the people they love. I always think of Tzvi as a very calm and observant person. I always loved the friendship that my mum and Itty had. I feel like that's the kind of friendship that I would always want with my best friend.
Sitting together during Shiva, I couldn't help but notice how alive your parents were in all of you guys, in your warm, vibrant personalities, sharp sense of humor, and your blunt, straightforward honesty. Those are all amazing traits that come directly from your parents. Their intense love and concern for you guys was so evident whenever they spoke about you, and I'm sure that they're still watching out for you guys.
He was an incredibly dedicated and devoted husband, and that always really stood out to me. Itty was often upstairs, but anytime we would go in, she was incredibly welcoming and loving and always there to talk. And I was really just drawn to her for her warmth and like love and open heart.
They were very special people who really had Mesiras Nefesh and love to the Shloshim, to make sure that all the pu'ulos that we organized would be matzliach. And we were very close to Tzvi and Ita. They were like a father and a mother to us in so many ways.
Itty was always very warm and caring, and Tzvi was always super engaging and always spoke with a glint in his eye.
Tzvi was always, no matter how little I saw him or how little we spoke, he was always that silent protector for me and the family. He was always someone you felt, you know, he had your back. And Itty sneaking me chocolates in her bed and playing with her China dolls. She said something to me that I'm holding on to forever. Your friends are everything.
They were both very warm and welcoming. How she made me feel while we were talking, like there was nothing else going on. I was the most important person.
She made a choice to look at the positive in everything. And I think that it's something that I connect to and I see in myself. He just showed up and visited versus, just talking about it and saying, how's he doing? I'm thinking about you guys.
I was enchanted by Itty's ability to make you feel like you're the most important person in the world when she was talking to you. One thing I learned from them is how two people can be so devoted to each other while still appreciating the differences and nurturing those differences in each other.
It was a mutual relationship where they both knew each other's tasks and they acted accordingly with the greatest of respect for each other. She had a peripheral vision, you might say, and a kindness and understanding of everybody she encountered.
One of the most remarkable things that kept irresistibly drawing me to Tzvi and Itty was that you could come into the house and just be who you are. The dedication that I saw then from Tzvi to Itty was something that impressed me deeply.
She treated me like an absolute princess. She took me around the entire house.
from every pillow, showed me every throw, every cupboard, every folded towel. Her energy was infectious. I loved staying there. I felt so special.
Tzvi was hilarious. He used to crack me up every time I had a chat with Itty. He was always in the background, standing, sitting, putting his 2 cents into the conversation, which I loved. Itty was my mom. She was my mom, with all due respect. She was always a part of my life, for everything, really.
Really a lesson that I learned from Itty is just to listen, to stop and to listen to people and to be there for people just like she was there for so many. She really was a support to me when I first moved here, knowing what it was like to immigrate. I would describe them as sincere, real, and funny people.
Tzvi is a very friendly person, a warm person, a person who's ready to help anytime that you need help. He would always call me to find out what's the right thing to do, because he wanted to do what the right thing is according to Torah, according to Shulchan Aruch, and as a chassid of what the Rebbe wants him to do. He left a legacy for his children and his whole family.
She created a safe space where you felt like you trusted her. And it's very important for us these days, especially as parents, to stop and listen to our kids. And Itty was the best listener. As a couple, individually, they're so opposite from each other, but they just are such a perfect balance when they come together.
We love to talk about, reminisce about yeshiva days with my father, and Itty made everyone in her presence always feel comfortable, no matter what.
I'll never forget staying up till like all hours of the night, which is what you do with the Faglins. Just talking about every pair of boots Itty had on hold, the latest fashions, just some great memories. But what I really learned from both of you is your love, your strength, your warmth, and your passion.
We were good friends. We used to get up into a lot of trouble. Me, Tzvi, and Isaac brought together. We used to go around quite a bit.
We can learn a lot from Itty and Tzvi. We can learn how to live, laugh, love. We can learn how to appreciate everyone and find the good in every person. We can learn how to care so deeply for every person, whether that's your kids, your spouse, or even the stranger on the street.
Finally, after 20 minutes of this, I kind of drop back, and my mother ends up walking together with Itty, and I hear Itty saying, out probably loud enough so that I could hear deliberately, "Oh wow, Benji's such a good listener," and I felt like $1 million. And she just always had that ability to make me feel good about myself. And whenever I felt too good about myself, Steve was able to chime in meathead and bring me back down to earth.
Everyone should just treat their wives the way Tzvi treated Itty. From Itty, just the way she connected and the way she felt whatever you were feeling. She was the type of person that you could just talk to her about anything, and she was there and with zero judgment.
Itty taught me that love is all-encompassing. I always used to say to her, "Oh, I don't know what you're going to think of me after I tell you this." And she would laugh and she'd be like, "Rifki, you think there's anything you can tell me that would make me not feel the way I do about you?" I learned from her that to love somebody is to love all their flaws and every part of them.
Tzvi really exemplified what it is to be a man. He was always there and supportive behind, a huge personality woman, and I think that shows the strength of a man. Her depth and her love just struck me so hard. She taught me that, even if life doesn't treat you fairly, you still continue to love hard.
When I think of Tzvi and Itty, I have very fond memories and lessons that I definitely plan to take on in my life from each of them as individuals. From Tzvi, the way that he was always making himself available to proactively reach out and connect, whether through a phone call or a text. Going back years from when I was a kid, I remember him being like that. And Itty always was the life of the party notwithstanding. I always remember her jumping up and being loud and being funny. So I'll miss them both, and I love them both, and that's what I have in my mind from them.
She always gave me the best advice. I didn't always listen, and sometimes she would say, "Sorry, I know you're not going to listen to me. I know you're not going to like what I'm going to tell you, but I'm telling you anyway." I didn't always listen, and then I would tell her, "Itty, I didn't listen to you," and then she'd say, "Okay, now how are we going to deal with it next?" want to mention your father. I wasn't close to him, but he was always so polite and so classy and kind.
I am her best friend, number 347. You might wonder how one can have that many best friends. The fact is, anybody whose heart Itty touched became her best friend, and she became their best friend. Those of us who knew her know the truth of what an amazing wonder she and Tzvi were.
When I went through some personal difficult times, Tzvi checked in on me very often, very, very often, to the extent they were living in Melbourne then. He came to town. He was in town in New York for a very few days, and we went out for dinner. He took me out to talk, to make sure I was okay, and I'm forever grateful for that.
They just made you feel like you were at the top of the list in that moment. No matter what was going on, you were important and you mattered and you felt it. You really felt it. I learned from them that focus on the good and the positive.
What I saw, what I experienced through the connection with Itty and Tzvi is people that have Ahavat Israel in a way that we can read in the books. Every Yom Tov, every Shabbos, every occasion that we had together was highlighted of time that I have in my life. For me, they're still here, they will never go.
We spoke very often on the phone. When he would call me, I would ask him, "Are you sitting on your balcony with your cigar?" The answer was usually yes, and I knew we had time for a schmooze. We enjoyed our schmoozes very much. We covered a lot of things. We had a few laughs, had good memories, and we look forward now to seeing Tzvi and Itty very, very soon with Mashiach.
I always learned from Itty how to be positive, because she would say to twist everything into a positive way, and she would also always say that there is a silver lining even in the hardest situations. From Tzvi, I would really have to say I learned devotion and loyalty. First, his devotion to God, and then his loyalty to his wife was unparalleled.
I hadn't had all that much to do with him in my adult life until that point. But from the moment I walked through the door, Itty was talking to me like we'd been best friends for decades. I think Tzvi really exemplified dedication and devotion. He was such a dedicated and devoted husband to Itty, and a dedicated and devoted father to his children. And Itty, no matter who she was talking to, she always spoke to them as if they were her best friend and the most important person in the world.
Tzvi went out of his way just to go every morning to put tefillin on a Holocaust survivor. Tzvi and Itty were both exceptional in chesed and in midas tovus.
My girls grew up knowing him as Uncle Cupcakes. Nobody asked him to do it. On his own, he just took them, his great nieces, to buy them cupcakes. So a different trip to Melbourne, I was fundraising, hitting up my friends. He just handed me a very generous check, one that I was never expecting. I never asked him. So from there we see that the power of being Matan B'Seser and giving without any fanfare.
Incredible passion, incredible generosity. She loved everyone equally. She had the most outstanding compassion for each and every person. There was no such thing as big shot or low life. Everyone was amazing to Itty. And more than anything, how to tune into each person, make them feel so special.
Everywhere he went and everybody he met was another opportunity to do Mivtzoim. Wherever it was, they were always sending me people to connect to Yiddishkeit. He was out there on the field as a real shliach. Something we could always learn from both of them is cherish each other, and every Yid you meet is another opportunity to do a mitzvah with them.
That's what I learned from her, to be there for people in their joys and in their sorrows. Appreciate the simple things in life, express appreciation when you feel it, and just have real connections to people. From Tzvi, I also learned about valuing people, just to always acknowledge people, say something kind, and make space for people, and listen.
She was just
a light wherever she went, always complimenting everything you were wearing, literally from head to toe, and then she would go through each item and ask you where it was from. She said, "My kids are all so amazing, and it has nothing to do with me. They raised themselves," and she started laughing. She raised her kids by just who she was.
Itty was always very honest and open and loving with us, and she treated us like adults. The conversations weren't childlike. They made us feel special and part of the crew. Just very sincere how much she cared about us and how much she wanted us to have a good life.
I asked her, "Is there anyone you don't like that one of your children married?" And she said, so matter-of-factly, "They love my children, though I love them." And that kind of acceptance and awareness is something I'll always carry with me. I hope to love the people in my life as she did, all-encompassing, unconditional, and I hope to emulate and incorporate into my life her non-judgmental way of being and her totally relatable way of living.
I wanted to treat her to a spa day. We get there and, we find chairs by the pool. We settle under the umbrella. I say, "Itty, I'm gonna be right back. I'm running to the bathroom, wait right here." By the end of that day, Itty was best friends with everybody around that pool, and I was amazed. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, people were just attracted to her like a magnet. It was pretty incredible.
Went off to Montreal, met Itty, and wham, that was it. You could not separate them then. And I love you all dearly. All be strong for each other. And take care. I love you all lots. Au revoir. Bye-bye, Rod. See you later, mate. Come home soon. Love you. Bye.
We all saw a sample of how much Tzvi and Itty impacted people. Just today, I was at my doctor, and he told me that his wife is lighting Shabbos candles since my wife asked her to light candles after June 24th to do a mitzvah for Itty and Tzvi. She says, we used to do it when the kids were small, and she stopped doing it for many decades, and she's doing it every Friday. Tzvi, when he lived 3 years in Hallandale, he always had a pair of tefillin handy, and he would tell me who he put on tefillin with that day. If he had a meeting with someone, he took his tefillin, and I'm sure from tonight's Shloshim, there's going to be a b'chein, there's going to be an outcome of many, many mitzvahs being done. V'achai yitein el liboy. One of the minhagim, one of the customs of a Shloshim is a siyum mishnayos, the conclusion of the Shas, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and in memory of Reb Tzvi Daniel ben David, we're going to call upon my beloved nephew Levi to make the first of 2 siyumim.
The siyum I'm about to complete is brachas. The Mishnah discusses the time and approach brachas should be made. The Mishnah expounds that one is required to bless Hashem even upon bad occurrences. This is based upon the pasuk. One should love Hashem with all their heart, all their soul, and all their resources. The Mishnah explains all your heart means to include both your good and evil inclinations. All your soul means with your whole life, even to the extent to which one should be willing to sacrifice that life for Hashem. with all one's resources means with your wealth. This pasuk is stated in Shema and said several times a day and in the evening before going to sleep. Like many others, my parents recited these words in Shema daily. But unlike most, they emulated this pasuk to the nth degree. It is only apropos that these words in Shema were their last. They loved with all their heart, they believed with all their soul, and they gave the most precious resource of them all, their time. Chayev Adam levarach al ha'rakeshim shehu mevarach al ha'tov. Shem v'afta, ez Hashem l'kacha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol medecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha b'yetzer tov v'yetzer hara. B'chol nafshecha afilu hu neitas nafshecha v'chol medecha b'chol mancha. V'ra'acha b'chol medecha b'chol mido shehu meided l'cha. Have meided lei b'meid. V'yaka Adam es reish. Sharishi connected Shar and Mizrach Shehum Kovan, connected base culture Kedoshim Laikans Lahar, Bais Maklev Malnale of Ndaze, Akshal, Ragov Layasun, Kampandaria, or Kiko Makal Klemer, Chosme, Bracha Shahi of Mikdash, Here Min Ha'olam, Mishkil Kilu, Haminim Va'amru, Ein Olam, El Echad, Hiskin Shia Oimim, Min ha'olam v'yad ha'olam. Hiskun she'ei ha'adam shal es shalom chaver b'shem shenemar v'nei vazba mibeis lechem v'omer kaisem Hashem imachem v'amar lei yirecha Hashem v'omer Hashem imcha imecha gaim ha'chayil v'omer al tavuz ki zikna imach v'omer es lasos la Hashem hiferes ersecha Rabbi Nasan omer hiferes ersecha es lasos la Hashem.
The second siyum will be said by my esteemed brother-in-law, Rabbi Yaakov Zusha Shmuel, the head shliach of South Dade County, Rabbi Yankee Felik, who is known by many people, including my good friend Rabbi Abba Perlmutter, as the Dr. Henry Kissinger of Lubavitch.
Before I make the siyum, somebody called me a few days ago and asked me, he says, were you close to your sister? So I said to him, what's your definition of close? And I said to him, look, the truth is that I didn't really grow up with Itty, because when I left home, she was 9 years old. And then I really did not see her till she was a teenager for a year or two, and then after she got married. So I didn't really grow up a lot with her. But the times I do remember about her, she was extremely funny. So, you know, we grew up in a house with 10 children. My mother wasn't into cooking. And the person she hired to cook, none of us wanted to eat her food. So we come home at the end of the day, scavenging for food. But Itty was smart and practical. While the rest of us sat around the table trying to figure out what we're going to have for dinner, Itty just opened up the fridge and ate right out of the fridge. And when we'd yell at her and say, Itty, what are you doing? She'd say, I'm cutting out the middleman. Just straight out there. And later on, my memories is when I was a bacher and some 70, we went to buy a hat at Bancroft, and we were in Williamsburg. And Itty stood in the corner, and she stopped all the Satmar women, and she was taking surveys, asking about their life, are they happy? We couldn't leave because I had my hat, but Itty was busy taking surveys. And the funny is, nobody was insulted. Nobody was upset. They all spoke to her, and they talked to her. And until people figured out that I was connected to Itty, because she's an Ainsworth, I'm a Felix, and just recently people realized there was a connection. Somebody recently just told me, he says, you're Itty's sister. I said, yeah. He said, I'm going to tell you a story. I said, you know her? He says, yeah. I said, where'd you meet her? I met her in the dentist's office. I said, how long did you talk to her for? She says, well, let me tell you what happened. She sat down, I sat down next to her, and of course she said, asked me who I was. And we got into a whole conversation, and she says, I got so involved in the conversation that when it was my turn to go into the dentist, I told the dentist, take the next customer, I'm going to love talking to Itty. And she said, by the time I left, I had no idea what her last name is, but she knew everything about my life from top to bottom. And she gave good advice. So recently, I would just like to share two stories, because really what you heard here was a lot about who they were as people, and funny and dedicated, but I want to share two stories with you. One that I heard at the Shiva, and one that Yerachmiel Jacobson from New York called me and told me a story. When we were sitting Shiva here, someone came in and sat down right in front of us and said that 25 years ago they had a major tragedy in their family. And people rallied. At that time, 25 years ago, the community was much smaller. People rallied around the family. And this woman sat in front of us and said, I want you to know that Itty came to my house every day for 1 year. She wasn't just there for the Shiva. She wasn't just there until Shloshim. She wasn't just there in the time of crisis. But when everyone's life went back to normal, when everybody moved on, and when there were new other things happening, Itty came to my house every morning for 1 year. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and Hanukkah, it didn't make a difference. She gave my children breakfast. My kids had no idea who she was. They referred to her as the cornflakes lady. And then she would sit with me for a few hours, and she ended up by saying, I want you to know, she saved my life. So Itty was not only full of love and full of dedication, but she stuck with it. When everybody went on with their lives, when the stories were forgotten, she was there. And think about what it takes to go to someone's house every year for a whole year and listen to their issues and their problems, and not only not be affected by it, but to affect them in a positive way. And then Yerachmiel called me up and he said, you're not going to believe what just happened. He said, I'm doing business with somebody, and we start talking, and the man says, he's doing business with someone from Australia, and the gentleman says, did you hear what happened in Florida? He says, yeah. He says, what's your connection? So he says, let me tell you, when I got married, we got married in Sydney. We had only a few members in our family, very, very small family. And we made our Sheva Brachas, the last one in the shul. And after the Sheva Brachas, Itty came up to me and my wife, and she said as follows. She said to my wife, she says, you know, when you're going to get home, in a little while you'll get pregnant, and then eventually you're going to have a baby, and you're going to get stuck at home. So what I want you to do for the next year is come to my house for every Shabbos and every Suda. And he said that for 1 year, we ate in Tzvi and Itty's house every single Yom Tov and every single Shabbos. And he says, I can never forget it. And then I was at a Vort for Tzvi Beimerbein this last week, and a few guys came up to me and they said, I want to tell you a story. He says, we were backpacking in Australia. We went to a wedding, and then we decided we're going to go do a little touring. And at the wedding, Itty said, she started talking to the boys, just yeshiva bachurim. And she said, what are you guys doing? She said, well, we're here for the wedding, and then we're going to go do a little traveling. So she says, let me ask you, she says, you just came? She said, no, we've been traveling a little bit, now we stopped for the wedding, and then we're going to go on. So Itty says, tell me, he says, you have laundry? Bachurim, a little bit shy. He says, yeah, we have a little bit of laundry. He says, good. After the wedding, come over to the house. You can wash your laundry. Then you can take a shower. And then he says, you'll move on. You go onto your next trip. And then when they came to the house, she fed them, made them stay over, washed their laundry. And then when they had to go to the airport, she said, no, I'll take you to the airport. So if there's a lesson to be learned, is in addition to her kindness and to her ability to connect to people and an ability to be able to raise everybody up, she had this ability to stick with it. So when everybody had moved on in their life, she was there for them. And that's who she was. And if there's a lesson to be learned, as the Rebbe used to always say, V'chayit and libay, I think the lesson is that sometimes we're available in times of tragedy, in times of need. We're all available to help. But when things get back to normal, we all sort of forget about what is going on and we just move on in our lives. But Itty had this ability not to forget, to stick with it, and to be with them until this situation was resolved. And that's something that we all can take and make part of our life. I'm just going to end with the last mission, Uksin, and then we'll say Kaddish, right? Right. So Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Asish HaKadosh Baruch Hu, L'hanchel, B'chol Tzadik V'Tzadik, Shleish Meis V'Eser, Asara Elemeis, Shenemar L'hanchel, Levi, Yesh V'Etzreim, Yamalei, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, L'motza HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kli Masik Baruch L'Yisrael El HaSholem, Shenemar Anei Iz Lamitein, Anei Baruch Samei B'Sholem.
There's going to be one more speaker, but we ask everyone to stay for Maariv. There's a lot of minyanim needed, so please don't run out. There's going to be one more speaker, and before I introduce him, we know that we are currently living with the Parsha of Re'eh. In the final Farbrengen of Parshas Re'eh that the Rebbe spoke in the year Tinosei, 57-51, the Rebbe said very special words, how Re'eh, we are currently living in a time where we could see with our own eyes the manifestation of many aspects of the Geula. So if you were to look up the Sikha, you'll see some fascinating words from the Rebbe about this week's Parsha, which speaks of not just Re'eh, connected to the Posuk and the Parsha that we're learning this week, but also referring to seeing presently in the current state that we are living in some of the aspects of Geula and Mashiach, and may it be Hashem's will that we should see the revelation of Mashiach now, and we will be reunited with the Rebbe and with Tzvi and Itty and all our loved ones. Achrin Choviv, I'd like to call upon my beloved nephew, Mendy, the Bechor, the firstborn.
For those of you who knew my mother, you know that she always made time for her Tehillim. And for those of you who knew her really well, I'm sure if you close your eyes now, you can clearly picture her laying in her bed with her glasses while reaching over for her well-used Tehillim with a page holder that had all the capital numbers she read each day. And with a smile and a sense of mission, she would say, I just need to do my Tehillim now. She said Tehillim for all her kids, her grandkids, family, and friends. And then my mother would start with her daily Tehillim that was between her and Hashem, every single day without fail. My mother believed and believes in Tehillim. She believes in its power and appreciates its beauty and the connection it gives one with Hashem. Any time I would call her with an issue or just to speak to her or tell her what's going on, she always answered with words of love, excitement, and encouragement. And that always uplifted my mood. And then she would always end off with the same thing, saying, I already said Tehillim for you today, but now I'm going to go say more. In her later years, she spent a lot of her time in bed, and it certainly bothered her, and she would have loved to have been up and about much more. But she didn't spend her time in bed moping. She used her time to say Tehillim and to reach out and be in touch with her family and friends all over the world. I know it was a great comfort for me, and I'm sure others as well, to know that whenever you called, she would always be on the other end of the call with love and encouragement. And she would always say to you that she would always either have said, saying, or will say Tehillim for you. My father was a bit different than my mother, but he was a believer in Tehillim just the same, not just in words, but in actual deed. He was meticulous about his Tehillim every day, and was always trying to get one of us to say Tehillim on Shabbos and Varachim like he did. He would quote that Shabbos and Varachim Tehillim is good for the person who says it, as well as the kids and the grandkids. Till last month, my children and I were covered. We are no longer covered by my father, and will have to step up and follow in his footsteps now. Both my parents share a love and appreciation, as well as a complete belief in the power and the beauty of Tehillim. Both encourage and quietly nudge others to say Tehillim. As Jews, we believe that when the neshama leaves the body, it does not go very far. The neshama will always be close to us to remind us of our past and to guide us in our future, and Emir Hashem to get a little bit of nachas from us. It is for this reason that we have decided to work with Kahas to launch a new Tehillim app that will be available to everybody all over the world. It will be easy to use, and please God, it will encourage those who say Tehillim to say more, and those who don't to start. And we will give my parents much needed nachas. Thank you.
4 minyanim are necessary.
Do you like these candles down there? Why? Not really. Move it over here. I will eat sweat very, very well.
Welcome to rented home to the house. The first night they were there, we walked in. We gotta get some food. They have a stock, very nice. So malabat, they're so beautiful. You gotta come now. There's so much room there. Very nice.
Hello?
Lily, I'll see you soon. Yes.
Mandy told me he doesn't think you should come to the house because you're not wearing a mask. Mandy, my brother, told me he doesn't think you should come to the house because you're not wearing a mask.
Who's not wearing a mask?
You.
He's not. You're joking.
I'm joking.
No. You shouldn't come to the house.
Love you. Ay, ay, ay. They chose, Mimi, you, the pee-pee.
It looks like this. When it's not solid frozen. Not solid frozen. It has enough of a pattern that you can see through it. Right, well, the stuff on the bottom there is, you see it's peeling. The stuff on the bottom there is later. They always had a glass. They get it down on the bottom. Which is a different way to do it.
Means I get invited.